Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the FPL show. Whether you are watching on FPL Dopata here on YouTube or you're listening to us via the FPL show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any other platforming podcast out there, welcome back. It's been a little bit since we've been here. I'm joined by Damo tonight. How you going?
Not bad yourself, mate. Not bad at all, Paulyyy. It's been an interesting week of fantasy, and it'd be interesting to see what we discuss tonight. That's for sure.
Yep, there's plenty to discuss. The first bit is you can tell by my background that I'm back in the setup. It's been a while since I've been recording back in here, so get used to the Greece 2004 backdrop because we are finally back where I belong. So big game week. Still not over technically. There's still one more game to be played tomorrow morning, our time, which is Luton and Burnley, which surprisingly has some big implications for fantasy managers all around the world. I think between most of us, everyone's got Kabore and Damo's captain Morris. So there's plenty to unfold tomorrow. So what we're going to be talking about today, we'll have a bit of an asterisk on it as well because ranks will change depending on performance there. But for me and Dom, we will finish this week on the same score. So let me get Dom's team up on the screen because he's not with us here tonight. But he had Leno in goal for a 1-pointer. He got 2 12-pointers coming out of his defense with Trippier and Colwill. And then he's got Kabore still to play. Then he's got Son 7, Bowen 9, Salah 1, Diaby 8, Gordon 5. You might see this exact midfield in about 2 minutes' time because Dom has copied my whole midfield on wildcard, which is why we are very similar. So what we've got, I won't go into too much detail with my team. I still will show it, but Dom and I have the same midfield and attack. He's just got lazy and copied me. So we both have Darwin, but he didn't actually know I was going to Darwin. I went Darwin late, and Dom went Darwin without telling me. So he saw that I actually had Alvarez in at the time. So I think he went Darwin to get away from me. And then the last minute, without even talking to him, I went and put Darwin in my team too. So we've ended up having the same there. Dom will get 1 point from you. Doji coming on, I believe, for Darwin. Yep. And he misses out on the 6 points of Matty Cash. So that extra 1 point Dom gets him to 61 with Kabore still to play. Now, if I bring my team up, we might as well group our teams together because they're so similar. My team, which is my team for this week, so that's my points there. So I'm sitting on 53 currently, but that's because I've got more points coming on off the bench than Dom does. So I had Areola get me 6, which is the first time this year I've had a goalkeeper get me a clean sheet, which was fantastic. Botman was odds on to play by the deadline, so I stuck him in the team. Otherwise, I actually probably would have gone with Zuma, so I still would have got the clean sheet anyway. But I went with Botman. But what it meant was I did set my bench up properly this week. I went Archer as the first sub just in case a midfielder didn't get up. But then I set up Cash in that second spot because I wasn't sure about him or a Stupidin, and we took the home fixture of Cash. That got me a +6. So Botman coming off for Cash and Darwin coming off for Archer gets me 8 more points, which gets me to 61 going into this game week or into this last match. So Dom and I both sit on 61. The differences here for me are Cash and Areola. Again, would have been nice for Darwin to get minutes, but similar to last week with Alvarez coming off early, the game wasn't scripted for Darwin to come on. Come the 70th minute, we were there to hang on. We weren't looking to win the game. We went with, we're down to 9 men. That's Liverpool being we. And, we went with a bank of 5 and 3 pretty much to see out the last 15, 20 minutes of the game. So it wasn't made for Darwin, unfortunately. I think if we were down to 10 men, Darwin would have come on and we still would have tried to get at Spurs. But I think that Jota red card really put that decision in, out of Klopp's hands. So, look, the positive of owning Darwin, we'll get into it a bit later, is that with Gakpo potentially injured and Jota suspended, there's not much competition up front in this Liverpool team now with, a fixture run here of Brighton, Everton, Forest, Luton, Brentford. I think if you can get some nailed Liverpool attackers, then they're going to get some return. So although Alvarez gets 8 points, this week, I miss out on those, potentially 6 points. But I think over the next month, I think Darwin's going to start at least 3 of those games, and there should be some returns coming. So that's my team. Again, 61 points on the week. Not too bad. I've left Damo to last for a reason. Get your team loaded up because technically you don't have the highest score, but
Yeah.
I've left you here because there's a world where you finish with the highest score. So talk us through your team.
Well, boys, you saw me have a right grin and a laugh. Let's just give you a little bit of story time with Damo. I'm watching the first game of the night with Paulyyy. Estupian misses a 1-on-1 and we're celebrating. Estupian gets an own goal. We're high-fiving. We're jumping on the couch. I've benched Estupian for Kobo. I'm a goat. Late in the Premier League. I forgot to confirm the change. Estupian -2 points. Painful.
Could have been much worse.
Don't worry, it got better because Botman is on the bench, and thankfully Damien was smart enough to set his bench up properly and have Cowell as the first sub as planned, and he comes on anyway. So in a perfect world, even if I wasn't silly, and this is a disclaimer to make sure you check your teams and make sure they're correct before you confirm, is the stupid would have been first up anyway because there's no chance of playing Udoji as the other defender against Liverpool. I would have still got a -2 points.
Look, if Estupinan doesn't get subbed off, you're taking more minus points because they end up shipping another, 4 goals in the second half?
Correct. So it could have been a lot worse. We'll go through Pickford again. Obviously, Pickford's been not great.
Dreadful. Well, he hasn't. Everton have been.
Correct. You've got a clean sheet now, Paulyyy. I haven't. To make matters worse, if you watch the game, Morris's first chance, which leads to the goal for Luton, is a header that he puts onto the bar, or it's bar onto Pickford. If Pickford isn't as good as he is, that's a goal for Morris. It's 2 goals for Morris, and I look like an absolute tactical genius. We'll touch on Morris properly in a second. Don't know what to do with Botman. Cole comes off the bench, which means I'm currently on 46 points going into the final 2 game, or my final 2 place playing game. Bruno failed, should have had a penalty. Obviously, VAR's not been the greatest. It's not going to be a discussion about football. Madison, I'm happy with, played well. And Buemo, it's time to go. Salah got a 1-pointer. Obviously, we all know that he should have had an assist. And obviously, the yellow card he gets is just another ludicrous decision in that game where he wins the ball back and it's 1-on-1 with the keeper and he's got booked for demonstrating. Saka loves to give away a penalty. He should have had Patrick. So when I look at this team and I go, our rank has gone from, 49k 2 weeks ago to 519k, about 200 and something k once Cowell's points come on. I can look at this game, we can go, as much as it's paying me to not have Trippier and not have a Newcastle defender, on a different world, if things went our way, I've got a return from Salah, I've got a Bruno Fernandes penalty, Morris has a second goal. All of a sudden, yes, Stupi gets -2 points. Saka scores a hat-trick because he takes both penalties. Even though Trippier's done what he has, my team's in a very good spot. But there are still some glaring issues. And as you guys have seen in many videos, I've talked about a game with 19 wildcard and a game with 10 wildcard and a game with 9 wildcard. It is a game week 8 wildcard because the button has been played.
Yeah, so that makes all of us now have played our wildcards. And look, it is what it is. It's called, do we panic? Is it time to panic? I wouldn't call it a panic. I think you're just looking more so at getting on top of some swings that are coming early, probably a bit of pressure from a lot of the broader FPL community have, that Newcastle defense solid, or at least Trippier. I think he's going to be very similar to last year, where he's probably going to be essential. He's only 42% owned at the moment, which I think is crazy because although their run is not difficult, I actually think their run's pretty good. They go West Ham, Crystal Palace, Wolves, Arsenal, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Man United, Everton, Spurs, Fulham, Luton, Forest, all the way up to that next wild card. There could be some monster returns there for Kieran Trippier in particular. I think a lot of people are going to be asking what do I do with Botman this week. Again, if you're not on a wild card, I think you hold him. I think if you don't have enough cover with Botman in your team, then you've got to set your team up well enough because you should be able to at least have 3, 4.5 defenders in your team by this point. And if you don't, then it's probably time to wild card because there's so much value in that 4.5 to 4.8 million defender bracket that you shouldn't have less than 3 of those guys. That tells me then your team's structured to have too many guys like Vardiol, Ben White and things like that are going to be too expensive to have. Like You can only have 3 good defenders if they're all 5 million, but you can have 4 if they're between 4.5 and 4.7. So that would be the world I'd be wanting to live in, and that's the world I'm living in this week. And for context, I wild carded last week, and this is my situation currently going into this week as I load my team up. So there are a few flags. Gordon got suspended, but he got himself an assist, which is fantastic. But I'm kind of happy that he's got the suspension now, get it out of the way. Then it goes into an international break. So he pretty much gets 2 weeks off. He'll play Champions League this week as well because he can't play in the league. So he'll get the game to Thursday, our time.
Yep.
And that's fine. I'm more than happy for that as long as he gets through that unscathed, gets a good break at the weekend, won't go and play for England in the international break, so he gets a week off. And then he gets a run of Palace, Wolves, Arsenal, Bournemouth. Fantastic. 5.6 midfielder that people aren't going to buy this week as well because everyone's going to panic about him being suspended. But the run of fixtures is there, and the Harvey Barnes injury is still going to be there when he comes back from suspension. And arguably, West Ham away is their hardest fixture in this run. So he misses that, which is fine because he was going to be on my bench for Archer this week anyway. So it doesn't particularly matter to me what happens with him because he can come back in for me locked in. People are going to freak out about Diaby. He walked off the pitch, clapping the fans, walking around the whole stadium practically. He went off the far side. Was he sore? Probably, because he got chopped about 3 or 4 times in that game. But Unai Emery came out after the game saying that, game was done. He's fine. He'll play at the weekend. He might not play in Europe, potentially. They might try and rest him for that. They've got a deep enough squad. They've got enough players to play in those roles. That young striker is looking really, really good as well. They might give him a start in Europe. Yeah, Duran, I think he's probably deserving of a start. Ollie Watkins is, maybe hit his form now as well. But I don't see a world where Diaby doesn't play this weekend. And then Botman, who knows? I'm hearing this week, game week 9. He'll get the international break anyway. So if you've got Botman, I wouldn't be selling him. I think he's just such a lock. The fixtures are good enough. You can rotate him in between. You should have at least 2 spots on your bench. Eventually, Kabore will leave my team because I've got money in the bank. But I'm not forced into making a move. And this is why I went with Darwin. And I didn't speak about this last week because when you guys saw my team last, I had Julian Alvarez up front. The reason I ended up spending the extra 0.4 on Darwin was because it was a transfer that I was going to book in for game week 9 anyway. So I thought I might as well get a transfer ahead and play Darwin now, albeit it was going to be against Spurs and Brighton, which were 2 tough fixtures. But Alvarez gets Arsenal, and I know he could score against Arsenal, and I was prepared for him to probably get a return against Wolves. So when I did see him score the free kick, it didn't bother me because I bet it against him probably getting a return. I also expected the Spurs-Liverpool game to be high scoring, which it kind of was, but you can't predict 2 red cards to one team there. So probably expected Darwin to start against Spurs, but got that one wrong. But, live and learn. He'll be fine. So for me, that's my team. It's set up really, really well. But Kabore is not someone I'm going to use anytime soon. But between Gordon, Estupinan, Archer, and Botman, sort of 2 of them have to play every week for me, and I'm more than happy with starting 2 of those. So that's where I'm at. I think, Damo, time to pull up your screen because I think you're going to run through quite a bit of your wild card and what your thoughts are.
Yep, so on screen, as you can see, is my current wildcard draft. Before I get into the wildcard draft, reasons for wildcarding, one reason why I think it's a mistake, and a couple of reasons why I think it's good. The reason for wildcarding, as you can see, is there is a couple of players in this team now that I currently do not own. That is the likes of a Matty Cash, that's the likes of a Trippier with ownership, that's the likes of Diaby that I really wanted to get in. That is a striker that is of Morris as well, longer term. It also means there is no Pickford. And as you can see, as I'm rattling off those names, that's a 4 to 5 players that I would have to transfer out, where a negative 12 is viable at some stages. Maybe this isn't the time to play a negative 12. There's also the potential for me to make this a little bit more flexible too and make a couple more transfers. There's a couple of reasons why I did not like wildcarding this week, and I want to get into both of them. Firstly is Trippier. I know the fixture run is decent and it's good, but I feel like with Trippier, you just shoehorn into playing him every week if you have it. So when they play Arsenal and Arsenal probably score, I've got to play him because it's the attacking return. So I think West Ham Bowen will get a goal against Newcastle this week. I've got to bring him in, hoping for an attacking return. And it's mainly because I'm playing that he's owned by 42%. And the main reason I'm on a massive red this week is the fact that I do not own Trippier. In a perfect world, if I was wildcarding, I'd probably go to Burn and use the extra funds to do other moves like Darwin and Watkins. But the reason I don't like wildcarding is it means a Stupian had to go to Trippier. I miss on the Stupian's fixtures from Gameweek 10 onwards with no clear path to get back to him. It leaves me in that sort of situation where have I reacted too hastily to a -2 and a Trippier gone bang bang, and when we should all be looking for future potential points? I'm not too sure. The reason I like wildcarding is when you look at the team on paper, Paul, and I'm about to read through it, just your general thoughts is that that's a pretty good side, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those playing along at home, I've got Turner in goal for this week and he'll be in goal for next week. Should be keeping his spot. Ariel was my bench keeper. Ariel after game week 10 has some crazily good fixtures, so he is in the team. Back three of this week with Trippier, Udogie, and Cash. I also have Kabore still as a 4.0 placeholder. This could become Charlie Taylor to free up funds. This also could move to someone else if needs be. And I've got Botman still sitting on my bench. But as Paul mentioned, if you got him, you've got to keep him. I'm on a wild card. We'll discuss him and what we will do. The midfield four is a midfield four with a fifth midfielder. I think they all pick themselves. I'm never dropping Madison. I'm never dropping Son for the next two fixtures with Fulham and Luton. Both. There is a world where Madison goes to Matoma to free up funds and do other things. That is correct. But I think having Son, Madison, Salah picks himself. We've had him since game one, and Diaby, who is 100% fit. No questions there. I think those four pick themselves on a wild card. Then it's all about your fifth spot. And the main reason I wild carded is it's not often you get a $5.5, $5.6 million midfielder who is nailed with goal threat and attacking threat in a very good side. When Harvey Barnes went down for 2 months, I said to Paul, Gordon's going to be a shout here. It's the main reason I'm wildcarded, which sounds crazy to bring a player in that is on a red card this week. It's more the fact that for the next 5 fixtures, it allows me to have a midfield that is fantastically good, Trippier, and an attacking midfielder at 5.6 million. And it could even go to Pedro Neto if we really wanted to. Up front this week, we have got Darwin Núñez, who I'll speak about in a second. Haaland should be on all your wildcards. Do not plan to go without Haaland. And Archer does play against Fulham because Botman is with the injury knock, and I do think Sheffield will finally score against Fulham.
The good thing with Sheffield, sorry, Damo, is they rotate really, really well with Newcastle. So
correct.
If you've got Botman and Gordon, and it's a good attacking fixture for Newcastle, you can bench Botman, play Archer because you've between Udogie, Cash, Kabore. Well, not even between Udogie, Cash, and Trippier. There's going to be 3 good enough fixtures to be able to bench Botman. That's why I'm on the side of keep Botman, because you just use Archer when you need him.
Correct. And look, Archer's sort of guy that you guys saw me bring him in against Everton and he gave me 12 points. I have a lot of time for Archer. Darwin's an easy one for me to bring in. I know everyone's moving to Watkins, and I have 0.0 in the bank with this draft. And if I had the money, I've had the extra 0.6 mil, I would go there. But that means selling Madison down to someone, or Madison down to Bowen, or Son down to Rashford, Fernandez, whatever. I'm not doing either with the next 2 fixtures. Something I maybe could do in 2 game weeks' time, but that's when Liverpool really hit their good fixtures as well. I'm not going to sell Darwin then. Obviously, with the red card and the injury, Darwin's fine. There is a rumor that he had a bit of a knee knock, but it's so slight that if he needed to play on the weekend, he would have. So I think he's fine and nailed, and Darwin's going to start probably 4 of the next 6. And I think with the fixtures he got, Darwin will go bang. That leaves me with this sort of team here. If I stop sharing my screen now, though, and I go to my fantasy tab, my fantasy football hub tab, there is a couple things I want to discuss with you, Paul, about what do we do with the wild card itself. So that's a team rating of 96 moving forward, of a game week rating of 89. That's more down to the fact they reckon Diaby maybe not going to start this week. And with Darwin not getting as many minutes, he's got a 4.1 average, but he will be nailed this game week, of course, and moving forward. There's no way Darwin should get a 3.9 average against Everton, but It is what it is. Same with Udoji too. I don't understand why this is so low. There's this team here, which I think is a really good draft for the money, or there is the potential to go from Botman to a Zuma, who have really good fixtures long term to West Ham, obviously. And as you can see here, Everton, Forest, Burnley, Palace, fixtures you can play him in, which means that we could also move Kabore, because we're going to have 3 very good fixtures no matter what, to a Taylor, for instance, a Charlie Taylor, who is playing for Burnley if needed, like really if needed. And that gives me 0.2 in the bank. A centre back that's playing, that's got good goal threat from set pieces, Trippier to cover the Newcastle defence, captain Udoji, with Udoji's good fixtures at the moment. And there is a potential down the line where I could go from Darwin down to another striker to get Udoji up to a Stupian because I've got the 0.2 in the bank. And I'm very tempted to do that. It also means with 0.2 that if I really need to make a move down the track, like Diaby or Mbeumo for whatever reason, I've got that money in the bank that I can move up slightly to a player that may be risen in price. So I am leaning of selling Botman to go to Zuma and Taylor with 2 playing defenders on the bench to get 0.2 in the bank just to cover any sort of price rises down the track if needs be. Forwards.
Yeah, I get having the money there, but I just think with Trippier 42% owned and likely to be probably around the 50% mark, come the deadline and Botman at 22%, I think it's almost like you need 2 Newcastle defenders to actually benefit like last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's my worry. Like Zuma, is only 2% owned. And I know that those fixtures are good. And I know Botman's not going to play this week. So it's hard. If I was on wildcard, I'd find it very hard to keep Botman. But then are you going to bring him back in at 4.7? That's the question as well. Because the minute he starts playing, the fixtures are good enough. It is a tough one because Botman and Zuma, you're not getting them in for goals. You're getting them in first and foremost for clean sheets.
There should be a few.
I lean Botman still and have the depth to cover the 1 week that it's going to be. There's no way it's 2. There's no way he doesn't play game week 9 with an international break in there. For the sake of, 1 game, I'd rather have Botman than Zuma, but that's just backing Newcastle more than anything.
This is fair enough. And they do Palace Wolves before you have to bench him for Arsenal. So maybe we should look at what Game Week 11 looks like. If I just reset my tab here so it doesn't say that I have no money in the bank to bring Botman back. So it's Game Week 11 when they play Arsenal.
Yeah.
When this loads up. Good on thing. So Game Week 9, Botman could be back. Let's just optimise. I'm not going to really go through this. I'm rolling in Game Week 9 after making a wild card, obviously. Yeah, that's fine. Palace at home, West Ham. Yeah, that's fine. Good enough, right? So Game Week 10, Botman should be back. Let's just say that's the team. Actually, looks like it could be the team. I don't think actually anyone here. Looks like
where's Digne come from?
Where has Digne come from? I don't remember doing that.
That's Udoji.
Udoji to Digne. There's a move. I must have been playing around. But you get
anyway.
Forest, Fulham. Anyway, Game Week 11. See what it looks like.
You're fine.
If I just get Udoji up because it's not
Just
bad to do that move. Udoji will be playing Chelsea.
That's fine.
Which means then you got to play Botman against Arsenal or Kabore against Liverpool. I don't think that's great.
I think you're playing Udoji against Chelsea. You're not scoring goals.
Correct. But I actually think maybe bringing Udoji to Digne.
Well, then you're 100%. If you're going to do that move in a week's time, then you might as well keep Botman and the value you've got in him.
Correct. And then that means I can actually go to Digne. He's got Forest and Fulham, but we might have Moreno back by then. But that might be a plan because then Digne can be someone that in 2 games...
Or it's Pau Torres.
Same thing, same 2 price, 4-5.
Yeah.
One of the 2 I'll be able to get. Because that means in 2 game weeks' time when they go Spurs, Bournemouth, Man City, I could sell Digne, still keep cash for the attacking threat to another midfielder or to another defender for 4.5, 4.6. And I'm sure there's someone in this list that you would go to. You probably go to a Palace defender against Luton, bench him for West Ham, and then play Bournemouth.
Yeah.
And then, which I think is fine. And then that's going to get you to your longer term sort of picks, etc. as well. Because at some point, Levi Covell comes back for me because I think he's absolutely nailed him as an absolute monster.
Yeah,
But
that left
that's
back
like,
position.
yeah, correct. Especially with the way they're playing it now. He looked really good in the game this morning. I've owned him since game week 1. Obviously, I've had some points go with me against me. It's sad to see him go out the team, but there's no way I can hold him on a wild card with the next 4 or 5 fixtures being really bad. So,
And you don't really want him back in until game week 6. I mean, he's got Burnley this week, but then it's Arsenal, Brentford, Spurs, City, Newcastle. Like
yeah,
game week 9 to 13 for Chelsea's dreadful.
Yeah,
but then 14, 14 is Brighton, Man United. Don't mind him in those. And then Everton, Sheffield, Wolves, Palace, Luton, Fulham.
You're not bringing him back to like game week 17, and by then he's still going to be 4.5. I doubt he's gone up in price. If he has gone up in price just for this one game week,
he might go to 4.6.
He'll drop back down, so which is fine. So I actually think this wildcard team as it stands with Botman is good if we plan to move Udogie on to like Digne, for instance, if he's still nailed, or else Moreno's obviously going to be out of reach. And that still gives me 0.1 in the bank down the track. My only issue with this team as well is down the track. We know we might need to move Gordon, someone else, but that could just be as simple as moving Darwin down to a different striker. If you have a look at Solanke, for instance.
Yeah, he's got a great run.
Solanke,
or in a 1 year.
Yeah, correct. I think Solanke or a 1 year then Solanke. Jeez,
what are you doing?
It's on forward. There we go. Solanke. I was like, I'm spelling Solanke right. Solanke goes Everton, Wolves, Burnley right now. Jeez. Wow. Everton, Wolves, Burnley.
Now you're considering Solanke.
Do I just go to Darwin to Solanke so I got extra funds? Means I can keep. Well, I've sold a Stupid now, or else I could have kept the Stupid.
Well, there's an option there. Or a 1 year is the longer play as well.
Yeah, a 1 year gets good fixtures down the track. Stupid.
You're on forward. What are you doing?
Not much.
You don't want to stoop in now anyway.
Yeah, I think you're going to buy him back and hopefully he drops back down. I just think not having a Stupid is awful. I know that sounds bad after.
Which is why I held him on my wild card, knowing that I didn't intend to play him last week, this week, or next week.
And
I just have to ride him on the bench.
Correct. But to get Trippier in now, I need to get him to come out because he's the one.
So the difference between our wild card teams is that you've got Maddison. So I don't have that third midfielder with Son and Salah. So my next one's Bowen. So I've saved 0.5 practically. And that's what's allowed me to keep a Stupinian. Other than that, the teams are relatively similar. So Archer, Darwin are the same. Diaby, Son, Salah, Gordon the same. Kabore, Trippier, Cash, Botman the same. So that's the little nuances there is I've gone a little bit cheaper on the midfield to keep a Stupinian, which is bold. Like to keep him on the bench for 3 weeks, for a very attacking asset. But once you get Fulham, Everton, Sheffield, Forest, Chelsea, Brentford, Burnley all in a row, with then Arsenal and then Palace, Spurs, West Ham, Wolves, Luton, Palace, Spurs, Sheffield, Everton, Fulham, Forest.
It might be the case that it will be Maddison down to Mateo, which gives you like 1.7 mil to then go up to 1.4 mil to go up from one of my
from Kabore or something.
It might even be. I don't know if I'm getting it from Kabore. Yeah, it should be able to really.
Just as long as there's no price changes.
Which is fine. And even if it means in one of those game weeks, and they take a -4 free transfer, 1 hit to get, Matoma, Estupiñán, and Digne in that same week to get that fixture run, it's probably worth it.
100%. I agree. So that is where we're at. So hopefully coming out of tomorrow morning's games, you are nestled in around the 200k mark. Hopefully I'm
Morris hat-trick.
Under the 1 mil mark, which is going to require a Kabore clean sheet and probably a return to get me up back to those 160 spots. But at my rank, he's only 10% owned. So I'm hoping that 10% is enough to shift me in a positive direction. But it's going to be an interesting week coming up as well. So we, Luton and Spurs kicking us off. Captaincy, I want to bring up a little photograph that I want to talk through, because it is quite interesting. Now, let me find where I've got this photo. But it's about captaincy. So what are your thoughts about captaincy this week, Damo, as I get this photo up?
I know on my fantasy football hub screen, I have got captaincy on. I've got captaincy on Haaland because it just presets to Haaland. At the moment, I've got captaincy on Son in game, but I actually think I'm leaning towards Salah because of Brighton's bad record of conceding.
Yeah.
And Son wasn't 100%. If there's ever a game that you're going to rest Son, it's Luton. So even though I think Son probably starts and plays 55 minutes, 60 minutes, I think I'd rather take Salah for 90, especially when I just happened to Liverpool in the league. They'll probably go out and absolutely go bunter. So I think for this game week, it's going to end up being between Salah and Son, which means I'm definitely not captaining Haaland against Arsenal. This is the second week in a row I've gone against Haaland as captain. That's the first time I've done that in a year and a half.
Yeah. Look, Haaland, I just don't think you can captain Haaland. He's got a dreadful record against the top 6 away from home as well. So I'm going to use the stats to back my decision in. The captaincy for me sitting on Son currently. No European football for Spurs should mean that they get a relatively okay rest from Saturday to Saturday. So a full 7 days. Son come off after 60 minutes. Again, it sounded like it was precautionary. So I'm happy to roll the dice on Son. If he gets rested, he's not going to play at all because Spurs should be dominating Luton. So the VC for me will sit on Salah just in case he doesn't play. But I just don't see a world where it's not on Son. Luton, we know, are really struggling defensively. If Everton could put the ball and put their chances away, which has been the issue this year, that game would have been extremely high scoring as well. And I just think Spurs are ticking on all cylinders. But on screen, if you're not watching on YouTube, there's only a few game weeks here where Haaland really stands out. You're looking at game week 11. He has Bournemouth at home. Again, you're probably looking Salah next week with Everton at home in the derby as the captain option there. Then you're looking at Salah again against Forest at home. You're just taking the home fixture there. Then in game week 11, it's Haaland with Bournemouth. Then in game week 12, it's a bit of a throw it up. Wolves away are tough. Brentford's tough to break down. So you probably Haaland against Chelsea just from early analysis there. Then in game week 13, I'm probably leaning Haaland against Liverpool anyway at the Etihad. I just think, we'll struggle to deal with him defensively. But then in game week 14, it's Salah again. Game week 15, it's Salah again. And then 16, it's Haaland. So between Son, Salah, and Haaland, you get 1 or 2 out of Son. You get sort of 4 out of Salah, or maybe 6 out of Salah and a couple out of Haaland. People were saying they're not going to buy Salah because he's not a captain option. I think from game weeks 8 to 16 in that 8 weeks, you're probably captaining Salah 6 times.
Correct.
Or 4 to 5 times.
That's game week 8 to game week 16. Obviously, this game week, I think Son and Salah are much better than what Haaland will be away from Arsenal. You mentioned the Liverpool fixture in game week 13. I remember back to last year, Van Dijk did a job on Haaland for us at Anfield. And I don't think City enjoy coming to Anfield at all.
That's at Etihad.
Oh, sorry. In that case, then, that point almost you. I still think we do a decent job against City. We always seem to.
I don't know.
I think
we're not the same defense that we have been in the past, though.
I think that's a game week where you look at Son against Aston Villa and you probably go, I'll take that at home against Spurs. I think that's a game week where you can be brave, like I was this week with Morris. I think with the form they're in and the
upside's not as much as Morris, though, when Morris has 2 fixtures to target and it's Everton.
Correct. But I also would say I'll counter that by saying that the way the Villa play, they will get hit on the break. So, and I think Son through the 9 with Maddison creating side, there's probably goals in that game. So I'd bet on Son there. I think that's the only game where we really sit there and go, well, it's definitely not Salah. It's Son's a punt and Haaland's like nailed. Even in game
Haaland's not going to get 3 returns either.
No, correct. Even in game week 11, I know they got Bournemouth at home. Luton have not looked great at all.
Yeah.
Right, not at all. So
that could be a rest time for Haaland too.
This could, even in game week 11, you could be brave and go. Salah could go absolutely ballistic against Luton, for and
could be a good rank climber.
Yeah, so there's a few weeks. I do think that in game week 9, it's Salah. Yes, Son has Fulham, but Everton we score. Forest is Salah. Fulham is Salah, Sheffield Salah. So I really don't see a world outside of Game Week 16 where you really are 100% Haaland.
Yeah.
Which begs the question, do you go without him for this run because you're not playing in captaincy in the Game Week 16?
No way. You still take his hat tricks that will probably come anyway. You know, there'll be one that we miss. If you're going to captain against Haaland that much, we will miss a haul. But, you know, you can't predict a haul against Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Tottenham. He'll get one big haul against one of those. But if you've captained against him across all of those, you've probably made it up across the board over those game weeks.
And it'll be Man United would be the one he'll go back because
probably
they look dreadful. So, but yeah, I like that as a template or as a visual that you put on there, Paul. Be interesting to see what everyone else is doing. So
well, that's from Fantasy Football Scout, so that is not my graphic, but thank you, Fantasy Football Scout, for that graphic. And on that note, that'll be where we wrap things up tonight. So if you've been watching, thank you very much for watching here on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe for more FPL-related content here on FPL Departer. If you're listening via the FPL show on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, make sure you get in the Discord. It will be in the description of the podcast. Make sure you jump in. We got a good community of FPL managers over there, and we will see you guys on the flip side of Game Week 8, getting ready for our international break.